Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Cash Flow Joe podcast brought to you by Pips Path to Property. I'm Pip Stellick. And here at Cash Flow Joe, we're here to help brand new investors do their first deal, or an experienced investor learning how to make more money and, more importantly, to do it with less of your own money, or learning how to do leverage. And so our company trains thousands of people all across the world. We have a blast doing it. So for more information, go to our website, pipspath.com. We have tons of free content on there. So go and consume as much as you want. Get to know who we are and what we do. Today on the podcast, I got a special guest, a good friend of mine. I've known her since she was a lot younger, and she's not even that old right now. So Whitney, and I know her by Chaffin. So Whitney Chaffin, or now Whitney Sellers. How are you today, young lady?
I am doing fantastic. It is so awesome to be here and see your smiling face. It's just awesome. You know, I have known you very, very long, and it's really cool to see you again. So thank you for having me.
We're great. We're very honored to have you on here. It's going to be a great time talking to you. So just tell everybody a little bit about yourself. And if you don't give me enough information, I'm just going to ask more probing questions to get more information from you. So tell us a little bit about your background, where you're at, how you got there, and where it all started, all that good stuff. I'm going to let you talk. And the less I talk on this, the better off everybody's going to be.
Sounds good. So, all right, about me. Well, I'm trying to think where to begin, because I could start from like the time I was born, or I could just okay.
From the time you're born is always a good starting point, because I don't think you have much reference before that. So yeah, that would be the furthest back you could go is from the time you're born. If you go further back than that, then you're crazy. But yeah, anyway, whatever you think is beneficial, because your story is your story, and I know your story, and it's a great story, and our listeners will love to hear all of it.
Awesome. Okay, so I was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, grew up in Ohio, and right on the border. So, you know, we're Steelers fans essentially, but right on that border in Ohio is where I grew up. So my parents were very hardworking. My dad had 5 jobs when I was growing up, and just a workaholic, but he was actually also a real estate investor. So I happened to kind of grow up in the real estate business, and that's eventually how our paths have crossed, because my dad heard an ad on the radio, read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, much like many real estate investors today, and went to a workshop, bought into it, purchased an education package, got a mentor, you know, did the whole thing. And in a very short amount of time, he became financially free through real estate investing without using any of his own money. And at that time, I was only 11 years old. So I you know, kind of grew up in this space. And shortly after that, my dad started mentoring and training on real estate education and how to, you know, purchase homes with none of your own money, how to flip houses, all of that. So I grew up in that space, and I think it was about 25. I think it was 25 when I finally decided I wanted to get into real estate. And then shortly after that, that's kind of when I met you. That's when I met Brad. That's when I met a lot of people who are over at Pips Path now. And from there, I became a real estate investor. I became a speaker. I'm now a mom. I'm a wife, doing so many different things than I think I was doing the last time I saw you in person. But that's a little bit about me. You can definitely probe all you want.
Well, so I got to probe right now, because obviously so I'm a mom was what you just started with. Who are the kids? How old are they? What's going on with them? Because that's the most exciting part of life, is the next generation.
Yes. So I have a 2-year-old. He turned 2 in August. So he's about 2.5 almost. 2-year-old Dax, Dax. Some people say I say Dak or Jax. So just specifying it's Dax. And then we have Hux, who's 5 months old. And you guys are hearing this for the first time, but baby number 3 is on the way. So no one knows this yet. Yeah. Yep. We just found out a week ago. My parents know, my brother knows, but the world does not know yet. So
they will after this, Whitney.
Yeah,
they will. Yeah.
Yep. So we do have another one on the way, and the goal is 5. So now I'm going to be a mom of 3. My husband and I will officially be outnumbered, but that's what the plan has always been, is to, you know, be a real estate investor so that I can be a stay-at-home mom.
So you're 2 going on 3. You're going to have to go to zone defense instead of man-to-man at that point, right?
Yep, basically.
I don't wish this on you, but I hope you have 3 more boys. So
I know.
You can have a whole basketball team right there for you. That'd be awesome.
Yep, that's exactly what my husband wants. He wants a whole team. So we'll see what happens. But I'm having the same symptoms I've always had. So my vote is that it's a boy again, but we'll see what happens.
I'm only the dad of 2 and never a mom, so I don't know how the body feels. But I know my wife Jen thought baby number 2 was feeling different than baby number 1. So she thought it was going to be the other sex. We had a girl, and then our second one, she thought it was going to be a boy. I'm carrying it different, yada, yada, yada. We didn't even pick a girl's name because we thought it was going to be a boy, and boy, were we wrong. So God has his plan. You don't have to make that call.
That's
So,
right. That's right. Yeah. But we right now just want a healthy baby. You know, that's all we care
yeah.
about. So it was definitely a surprise. I wasn't planning to have another kid right away, but if you want 5, you gotta kind of stay on a path there. So
You got to you got to stay on schedule. You can't be
Yep.
taking any years off. You just got to go
That's
boom,
right.
boom, 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 boom.
Yep.
So,
That's right.
so Hux will be 15 months older than his younger sibling. Is that right?
Maybe less. Yeah. He was born May 30th, and then this baby's due June 28th. So
Wow.
yeah, it's close.
I have a brother that's 17 months older than me, and everybody thought, that was awful close. So yeah, you're like, yeah. I believe
Yeah.
I'm probably going to offend somebody when I say this, but I've heard there's things called Irish twins.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
You're
what
not
it'll be.
Irish. Are you Irish? I
I
don't think
am
you're Irish.
actually.
Well,
Yeah.
there you
My
go.
brother has red hair. Yeah. This baby could have red hair. You never know. But
Wow.
yeah, Irish twins. Yep. That's what they'll be.
Cool stuff. And so where do you guys live at?
We're in Lake Worth, Florida. So it's a little bit, I used to live in Delray Beach, which is where all of my, background says I'm from or that I live now. But Lake Worth is a city a couple miles north of Delray Beach. And we live in a cool community. It's a gated golf community. And it was kind of our first investment as a married couple. Like, we bought this house, got it at a discount. It's already gone up in value, like $200,000. We renovated it. And that was kind of the plan, was to flip it. But then with having children, we're like, we love this neighborhood. We don't really want to leave yet. So that's where we're at now. And a lot of our investments we're working on are actually in other states. That's what our plan is, to kind of have a lot of land in either Tennessee or Georgia. My husband wants to be in a cold state. I do not, because I grew up in a cold state. Yeah, I don't want that. But for investment purposes, we're like, okay, there is a market for certain areas like that. So that's kind of what we're exploring now.
Yeah, well, your husband's a big muscle guy, so they stay warm a lot easier, I guess, in the cold weather states.
Yes, that is right. Yeah, he's a big dude. Loves the snow. Yep.
That's just messed up. I live in a cold weather, somewhat cold weather state, but I would love to be just in Florida, but my wife won't let me move. And I apparently love my wife because I'm staying right here. So it's all good. So real estate wise or life wise, doesn't matter. You can go any direction, because all of the life lessons we learn help us in real estate, and all the real estate lessons we learn help us in life as well. I was just talking to another person on a podcast, and he was using an analogy of parkour. I didn't even know what parkour was, and how his parkour knowledge helped him in real estate. Do you know what parkour is?
No, but I just saw something with the word parkour on it the other day, and I don't even remember what it was.
So you're going to have to YouTube it. And he's one of my students and just a great investor now. But parkour is this kind of where you're jumping from object to object. It's kind of like gymnastics and American Ninja Warrior coming together, and they're doing all kinds of obstacle courses, but it's more, instead of an obstacle course being set up, it's like looking at a 2 or 3 story building and just trying to figure out how to climb up it with the gutters and the bricks that are already there. It's a little dangerous and insane, but he said if you could overcome the fear with parkour, you can get into property. So let's go to that. And I know you're not a parkour aficionado, neither am I. I don't even know how we got off on that tangent, but so what are some of the biggest challenges? I think I know some of your answers, but I'm going to see if they're the same. And if not, I'll probe it a little further, but because I've heard some of your challenges over the years. What are some of the biggest challenges have you faced, and how did you tackle it? And that could help our listeners that are listening to this podcast.
Sure. So one of the biggest challenges I'm always going to go back to is I had a dad who was educated in real estate, and you would think that I would kind of just pick up on all of that and want to follow that path, but I didn't. I wanted to go the harder route. I wanted to go to college. I wanted to be on TV. I wanted to kind of find my own path. And I did do that. But there was a time in my life where I finally had enough pain that I wanted the freedom. You know, when you work in a 9 to 5 and you have to request time off for holidays or birthdays, and me being in Florida where I worked a 9 to 5 and all my family up north, for me to go home, I had to request time off, unpaid typically. And I was sick of doing that. So I finally decided I wanted to learn real estate, but my dad, you know, the hard worker he is, wanted me to follow the path of getting educated. And I know you and I have talked about this too, but because my dad worked for an education company on real estate investing, I never had to pay for the training. I had the ability to just take the classes as a daughter of a professor, so to speak. It's the same thing if you go to a university, if you have kids who go there and you're a professor, they get a discounted tuition. It's very similar. So that's how it was for me. But because I never really had any skin in the game, I think I kind of had like this relaxed thought about getting educated. And it wasn't until there was even more pain in my life that I actually took it seriously, that I needed to learn the stuff. So I think one of the biggest challenges was having a rich dad, so to speak. I think the poor dad side of it probably would have given me a little bit more grit than a lot of people have right out of the gate. And you would think that it'd be the opposite. You know, having a rich dad, you'd get there a lot quicker, but it was the exact opposite for me. It was like I needed that pain and push, and had to actually spend money on a mentorship to get there to feel good about it.
And so now you said, so that's an awesome answer. So now you said you've had the opportunity to speak and become a speaker. Tell us a little bit about that, because I know you and I've had a lot of discussions about that and some dinners and some stuff about that over the years. So tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. So my background is TV. You know, I went to school for journalism, and I've always done like broadcasting, and I worked in TV for 4 years, and I did radio. I did a bunch of stuff, but it wasn't fulfilling to me. It was always just like, you know, I didn't get excitement interviewing somebody who just lost a loved one in a car accident or something like that. It just was not for me. And I really started to hate the media. And so I had this transition and decided that like I would just start doing TV commercials for people. And that's where it kind of started, as I was doing car commercials, and I worked at a car dealership, and I would present and pitch whatever they wanted in their advertisements. And that's kind of how the speaking started. But once I became a student of real estate education, I was doing a lot of, what would you say? I guess now the strategy would be considered like social housing or purposeful, impactful housing, or, you know, you can call it whatever you want, but I was doing something a little bit different than the norm. And when I did that, the company that we all worked for realized that there was kind of like some substance there. And so the speaking, I just kind of fell into it. You know, I am faith-based, and I believe that there's always a plan. And it started after working for the company, you know, by helping people get enrolled in financial education. So I started as a student, started doing some stuff as a student, and then got brought into the company to work in the back of the room. You know, I've worked with you in some of your events and things like that. And then I think from there, it just kind of happened. You know, I just kind of fell into an opportunity. And because of my background with speaking and this kind of desire to help people, and what I've learned from you, just from the investment side and on the speaking side, it kind of just all worked out. So I started speaking, was one of the top preview speakers, you know, the first event that they do before they go into like a 3-day training. And then from there had some other opportunities with faith-based organizations, some with actually nonprofits, which is where I'm really involved. I still do some like announcing and emceeing for people as well outside of that. But as it pertains to real estate, that's kind of my focus, is that purposeful investment. That's kind of what my whole talk is about using real estate to help people.
Very cool. So then what's exciting about what you're doing right now? And maybe it's in the nonprofit industry. I'm going to go with that direction because that's what you said. So what's exciting about what you're doing right now?
I would have to say what's exciting now is I'm sort of seeing real estate in a different way than I ever have. You know, it's always been obviously about helping people, but I think before I had children, I was more concerned about the money, and not so much that I was only doing it for money, but it was like, my dad kind of told me this one thing. He said, pick a number in your head that you want to make every single month and do deals that will get you to that number. And I agree with that. But also there is a sense too about just like doing the deal because you know it's a good deal for the people you're helping. And that's kind of where I've shifted. I used to do a lot with drug and alcohol recovery and people coming out of prison. And I'm now really shifting into children in foster care. And that's kind of like always been in the back of my business, because I'm very affiliated with a nonprofit called Place of Hope, where they take neglected children and victims of human trafficking and children in foster care, and they put a roof over their head. And so I've been involved with them in the past, but there was this gap, and now I'm kind of back into it.
Very cool. My wife, as you know, Jen, she was in child protective service work for years. So I'm asking, because I don't know, is this kids while they're still younger, or is it the kids that are aging out of the foster system, or what is both?
Yes, it's both. So they have some that are younger, some are 16 and they're pregnant, and they put a roof over both their heads. Yeah. And I've got actually a friend in Ohio. Her name is Gina, and she has a house called Esther House, where they actually take women who are pregnant and don't want to have abortion. They want to keep the baby, but they just don't have the resources, and they're taking them in up there. And they're now, it's amazing. The church is helping them rebuild the property. They got a property for 10 grand. And they're now, I think they've got like 4 bedrooms that they're housing women. And now the city is giving them properties to do this mission, all because they kind of led with this purposeful investment. So I'm kind of in that space now, more so on the kids side. And I think that's the mother in me, just like really feeling more connected to that population. And I certainly know all about the other groups and can help them. But for my personal, what I'm doing, it's really about the kids in foster care. And the organization I work with, Place of Hope, it's a great thing for real estate investors because, as you all know, when you're starting to structure your business and you have different entities and you have these tax advantages that you want to take advantage of, if you have money that you're essentially going to be taxed on, and I'm not a CPA or an attorney, but I just know this from what I've done with it, I had an excess of money that if I wouldn't have rolled it into a nonprofit or wouldn't have put it into my own nonprofit, I would have been taxed on it. So instead, I took $25,000 and I gave it to Place of Hope, and they built a library and put financial education books in the library and named the library after me and my family as a naming recognition for their campus. And so they do this with real estate investors, with doctors, with attorneys, with anybody who has this kind of excess capital at the end of the year that they would be taxed on. And that's kind of what I'm doing now, is spreading that sort of message to be able to help Place of Hope.
So what would you think would be, and maybe you've already said it, but I'm going to ask it. What's been your biggest win then?
Outside of what I just said and about helping people, it's my husband and my children. And it's so cool to kind of be talking to you guys, because I think a lot of like me wanting to have a husband and wanting to have kids, you guys were a part of that time period in my life where I was like, man, I just want to find a good husband. Man, I just want to be a mom. I can't wait. And now it's all happening. So that's probably the biggest win.
And so then what's been the biggest challenge? Being a mom and a husband or a wife? Sorry.
I would say, yes. I think honestly, the biggest challenge has been separating myself from this world to be a mom full time. Because for much of my life, I mean, I'm 33 and I didn't have my first son and get married until I was 30, 31 even. So it was like, I feel like I'm a little bit older than most, maybe just my generation, that when I was growing up, like a lot of my friends have had kids for years, their kids are already in grade school, high school. So I'm kind of late to the game in that. But I bring that up because the biggest challenge for me is I've always been this like alpha independent businesswoman. And now I have to be this sort of like feminine beta mom. And like, I don't know how to explain it, but like, I'm trying to be the stay-at-home mom without this like hustle work mentality. And it's very difficult because I still have this like desire to go speak on stages or to be on the road because I love that life. But this is where I'm meant to be right now. So it's been a little challenging kind of adapting, but it's working so far.
So what piece of advice would you give somebody who's starting out their career? Because you've done both. You'd had the career, then now you're a wife and a mom and integrating that all together. What kind of advice would you give somebody who's 18, 20, 21 years old right now? Because you're so old at 33. I mean, let's be serious. I can't believe you're that old. Have you found your first gray hair yet? Is this all I want to know?
I have. I didn't until after I had kids, but I did. It's in the back of my head and it always comes and I pull it out.
There you go. Well, be glad that you can pull that one out, because if I pulled all my gray hair out, I'd be bald. So there you go. So what piece of advice would you give somebody at the ripe old age of 33 that's younger than you?
I would say if you don't have children yet, first of all, everybody needs to know how to invest in real estate. I don't care who you are. I don't care where you're from. It's a requirement, I feel, at this day and age. Doesn't matter who you believe in politically, doesn't matter what you believe in faith-wise. It's like literally you need to own property, because there's so much happening right now across the world that if you don't own real estate, you don't have any power. And it's hard to even say that, and it's probably even harder to hear, but it's true. It's like you have to own real estate. You need to, and you need to learn how to do it without the banks and without these big people who are in control. You got to do it creatively. You need to do it with person to person, private people, whatever you can learn on the creative side that the schools are not teaching you. I 1,000,000% push that first. If you're already having children and you don't know the real estate space, I'm going to say the same thing. You need to get educated, because that's what's going to be able to give you whatever it is that you want. So if you're a struggling parent now and you have kids and you're not able to provide in the biggest way, think about what's important to you, because a big thing for my husband and I is we want our children to be homeschooled. I don't want them going to public school. And if I'm not here to teach them, who will be? If I'm at a 9 to 5 and my husband's at a 9 to 5, where are our children? And we want to raise them. We have certain values and things that we want to instill in them that a school will never do. So that would probably be my biggest advice, is just get educated and start buying property.
Very cool. So when you got started with all this stuff, what's one thing that happened in your career that you didn't expect? That was maybe a surprise. I wanted to make you think a little bit.
I have to think. A surprise, man. I feel kind of like all of it. And the speaking would probably be the biggest surprise, because while I knew that I kind of have like a talent, you could say, in communicating, I never in a million years thought I would be speaking on a stage about real estate investing and helping people, ever. Even with like the background of having real estate, I never ever thought that was something that would happen for me. But I kind of got thrown into it. There was a women's event that I was supposed to be working as just like a crew member. And the woman who was speaking, she was actually pregnant at the same time, and wasn't permitted to fly because she had like high blood pressure or something. So her doctor said, you can't fly. So I'm in the airport going to the event to be just like a representative on behalf of the company to help people that weekend. And the man on the phone calls me and says, you're at the airport right now. And, the girl who's supposed to speak, she can't. So you're going to speak. So I literally got thrown into the event. I didn't have a PowerPoint. I didn't have a computer. I didn't have anything to be able to present. I ended up doing this event. I spoke, and you have several sessions when you're speaking at like a free seminar. And the first 2 sessions I did were terrible. They were just so far off of the beaten path of what you should do as a speaker that I was like, this is not for me. And then by the end of the weekend, we ended up setting a record. So that was probably the biggest surprise, because that was the beginning of the speaking career. And now I think ever since that moment, it's almost like I expect for crazy things to happen as a speaker. It's like I expect to be thrown into something and thrown into the fire, and for things to just work out, because that's kind of where it all started, I think.
That's a cool answer. I like that. So you've probably spoke to groups as small as 10 and probably into the thousands, is my guess, knowing a little bit about your history. Would that be a fair statement?
Yes, I would say 10 or even less than 10. I think the smallest group I had was 2.
That's not considered a group. That's that. Yeah. I don't think you could put 2 as a group. I'm just saying, no. I don't know. I would call it a pair. I would call it a pair, maybe a couple, but it's not a group.
That's true. Yeah. So 2 and up to, what was the number you said, the highest number?
I'm going to say in the thousands. I was just being very general.
Yeah, I think the highest number is like 3,000.
Yeah. Very cool. So how does that feel? Because I know how it feels, but a lot of people don't. And I know there's people that are listening that are going, because I know they were probably like me. I used real estate as a stepping stool to be able to speak in front of groups of people. I always knew I wanted to speak in front of groups of people. That was my why. And I used real estate and the success I had at that to be able to do that. And I'm guaranteeing there's some people right now listening to this going, well, I don't know if I really want to do real estate. I really want to be, able to stand on stage and speak to people. I use that as my stepping stone. So tell people what it feels like for you inside when you're. Now, I don't think probably with 2, that's like a dinner more than maybe even a double date, if you really want to look at it that way, but when you're speaking in front of 100, 200, 1,000 people, how does that, what happens inside? How does that make you feel inside when you're doing that?
It is the most natural high I think a person can ever feel. I mean, for me, it's just like, and my brother is the exact opposite. If he got on a stage of more than anybody, doesn't even matter if there's 2 people or 1,000, he would throw up. There's no way he could do it. For me, it's like, I get this like adrenaline, almost like you're going to go into a boxing ring or you're going to play a football game. Like that is my high. That's my sport. And that's how I feel every time I'm about to go out there. And once the, introduction is given and I'm there, I kind of black out for like 45 minutes. And it's just this like, I don't know, something comes over me and comes out and does what it does. And then by the end of it, you come off stage and you're like, oh my gosh, that was the best thing ever. And that's what's so addicting. And that's why it's so difficult to just step away and be a mom full time, because that is my sport. That's like my thing that just gives me this internal feeling that I can't even explain.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. It's kind of like, because it feels the same way for me. That's my game. Yeah, that's what I like. I don't play other games as much anymore, but boy, I love the game of standing in front of a group of people. So what's the dream project that you're working on or that you want to work on? Obviously you want to have 3 more kids and you're 2/5 of the way there, but now a little more than 2/5 after this podcast.
Yep.
So what's the dream project that you and your family you want to work on?
So we have a couple. Like personal goals, I want to continue to speak. I like the once a month kind of thing because it just gets me out there and lets me do stuff. So I think for like an internal goal, that's one thing for me. But as a family, one of our big things we want to do is have a 10-acre compound in like Tennessee or Georgia or we're looking at other states too. We go to Arkansas in a few weeks because my husband has a professional arm wrestling tournament. And so we're looking in Arkansas as well. But we want at least 10 acres of land, and we want to have sustainable land. So we want chickens and cows and the garden and a gun room and all these different things that would be sustainable no matter what happens in the world. And that's a personal goal, but that's our kind of our 10-year plan. That's the biggest thing we're doing. And on that 10-acre compound, we also want to have like vacation rental type stuff. So we're working on that. That's the 10-year project, hoping it happens a little bit sooner. But I would say that's the biggest goal right now.
I like to use the use of the word compound. Because, that sounds way different than just I want this 10-acre piece of land that I want to have a family homestead on. No, you want to call it a compound. I'm not sure what that really means, but I guess as soon as you went into the gun room, I'm like, oh, I get it. She wants a compound now. Without the gun room analogy, it just wasn't working. But when you said I want a gun room, chickens and a gun room, I'm like, oh, I get the compound now. Beautiful. Well played.
I guess the tie-in is I said that my husband's a professional athlete. So he wants like this ninja warrior backyard, for our kids and to just be training and do drills and all this stuff. So that's part of the compound is it's going to have that. And then it's going to have, the sustainable land type stuff too.
Sounds to me like you're training soldiers, not athletes, but that's okay. It's all good. So I do want to say I've been a little bit to Tennessee, very little to Georgia, but I think Arkansas gets overlooked and cost of living there and just some really cool things. For a lot of the things you're talking about, I think you'd be a perfect. So I live just north of Arkansas and I've been down there a lot. So it's a beautiful area, totally underrated when it comes to a lot of that stuff. So very cool. So let me ask you this. We're getting towards the end of this. You've interviewed a lot of people, I know. And sometimes you interview people, you didn't even like the questions you had to ask them. So I'm trying to figure out as I become a podcaster in this late age in life is what's one question that you wish I would have asked you that I didn't, and how would you have answered it?
Oh my goodness.
I know. I told you it's going to make you think, Miss Whitney.
Oh man, I don't know. A question that you could have asked me.
And what's one, I guess maybe what's one of those things that, somebody would want to know about you that I didn't even ask you. I mean, obviously the fact that you're pregnant, I wasn't going to ask that question. So that would have been really out of the blue. I can tell you a story while you're thinking about that. I was teaching in front of a group of people one time, 70 or 80 students, and I called somebody to the front of the room. And this young lady walked up. She raised her hand. She walked up to the front. As she's walking up, I literally said to her in front of 70, 80 people, I said, when are you expecting? And dumbest thing I've ever done. Now, thank the Lord she was expecting, but if she hadn't been, would have been the worst question I could have ever asked. So what's a good question I should have asked you?
Maybe this is probably just something as an interviewer, what I think of is if you say something and it triggers a thought in my mind to ask the question. So I mentioned arm wrestling, not that it has anything to do with this podcast, but maybe a natural follow-up question would have been like professional arm wrestling. Tell me about that, but I don't wish that you would have asked that. So I don't know if I have one to wish.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time I was at an arm wrestling tournament. It's been a while, so it wasn't in the front of my mind. Well, you were talking about arm wrestling, and then you threw the word compound in, and my mind went to compound, and that was my trigger for that. So one last question. This is kind of a fun one always. So if you could have dinner with one person, and they can be still living, they can be passed away, they could be famous or not famous. Have one dinner with one person of your choice. Who would that be and why? That is not a person.
I would probably have to say my grandma, my dad's mom. She passed away when I was 19, and I feel like she had so much wisdom to share with me. And she was also Native American, and there's like a bunch of history there that I wanted to learn about that no one in my family knows or remembers. So that'd probably be who I would pick, my grandma.
Very cool. That's a great answer. Great answer. So, Whitney, tell these young people and old people that are watching this podcast, listening to this podcast, how can they get in touch with you?
The best place is honestly probably Instagram. My name on Instagram is wit.sellers, or Facebook, it's Whitney Sellers. I have emails, but I, get so many spam emails that a lot of them are just getting deleted. But social media, I get notifications quite often, and I'm always on there just seeing what's up. So Instagram or Facebook's probably the best way.
Very cool. So before we get out of here, I just want to say thank you. I appreciate you being on here. That was awesome. Very good stuff. And for you guys that are listening or watching, if you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you use. For more information, go to our website at pipspath.com. Follow us on social media, Pips Path the Property and Cashflow Joe Podcast on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. I don't know if we're on Instagram, but we're definitely on YouTube. Make sure you watch us on YouTube so you can see the interview as well as listen to it. So leave us a comment, give us a follow. And once again, Whitney, thank you very much. Appreciate you.
Of course. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We look forward to seeing everybody on the path.